It seems appropriate to talk about the news on its own set. 40 years ago, WABD's news department was one man, Sam Cuff, who was also the program manager. For some years after, Sam, an announcer, would just read the wire copy stories, sometimes with a little film or a couple of still pictures. Dumont didn't have the background and resources of a radio network, no Edward R. Murrow in wartime London or H.V. Kaltenborn in Washington. But slowly, an expertise and a style did develop.
Shall it continue?
First, it was the Kefauver hearings with Frank Costello.
I refuse to answer.
Then the Army McCarthy hearings, day after fascinating day covered by WTTG, the Dumont station in Washington.
The answer is no. You will not get that information.
You wish then to put your own interpretation on your own, tell us less than the whole truth?
Mr. Welch, I think I've made it very clear to you that neither you nor anyone else will ever get me to violate the confidence of loyal people in this government who give me information about communist infiltration.
The major innovation in Channel 5's coverage came in March 1967, when the 10 o'clock news began.
This is Christopher Jones, Metro Media, Moscow. The funeral of Yuri Andropov was held today on a cold, clear afternoon under a bright sun.
Long before we actually arrived in guerrilla territory, we began to feel the atmosphere of El Salvador. We started our walk at about 9 o'clock last night, and we walked until 10 o'clock this morning, which was just a few minutes ago when we arrived here. This is a rebel-held military outpost.
At first, the authorities limited their firing to tear gas in an effort to drive the students back. But that failed, as did rubber bullets. Then the Israelis started shooting at the students, not over their heads. And for all but 4 hours of the early afternoon, the residents of this city, Hebron, were told they would have to stay off the streets, inside their homes.
Is it revolution or is it hooliganism? There are many in Northern Ireland, Catholic and Protestant alike, who see this kind of destructive violence as nothing more than wild kids taking any opportunity they can get to strike out at any symbol of authority.
Did he try to rob you?
Yeah.
What happened?
Three of them came in there.
Yeah?
Then he pulled a sawed-off shotgun.
Yeah?
And that's all.
This is the shotgun right here?
Right.
Is this the first time you've ever shot anyone?
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
What hit you on the head?
One of them punched me. Three of them got after me.
Yeah?
Well, I went after him.
Thursday, the 14th of July, the day after the night of Black Wednesday, the 13th. Good evening, I'm Bill Jorgensen, and this is the 10 o'clock news.
Hi, come on.
We're now inside the Bronx House of Detention. We're in the North Wing. This is a dormitory area. You're going to see the type of real concern that there was here for an escape.
Health Department officials say the cold weather is a blessing. They say it'll keep the garbage from deteriorating too quickly. In the meantime, the city has contingency plans standing by. John Miller, Channel 5 News.
As far as the police were concerned, the confrontation couldn't have come at a worse time, when thousands of working hard hats were on their lunch break and clearly in no mood to entertain the jeers and the taunts of the demonstrators. They beat a chilling cadence on the pavement with crude weapons, spanner wrenches, pieces of pipe, and steel rods.
The lines swelled at many service stations, and motorists drove north and west of the city in search of available gas. On East Houston Street, the line ran 7.5 blocks, and motorists had to wait up to 3 hours.
The moment some had been waiting for 2 hours. A burst of cheers like a bottle uncorked. The rally for more than 20,000 here at Madison Square Garden was billed as Youth in Concert with Pope John Paul II.
addition to co-anchoring the 10 o'clock news, I'm the anchor and executive producer of Channel 5's Black News. The program was created back in 1970 to deal with the lack of positive exposure of blacks in the media. The program is designed to focus on the black community in particular and the minority communities in general. This includes local, national, and international events. The show was welcomed by both the white and the black communities. Blacks and other minorities view it as an outlet and a chance to be heard in a positive manner. Some of the whites I've spoken with about the program say that it's enlightened their perception of the black community. We've interviewed personalities, black and white, young and old, artists and laborers, company presidents and politicians.
There was a kind of spirit that existed at Channel 5 when I was there, and I was covering general assignments and mostly the politics of New York. And we did it usually in a rather unorthodox way. I remember the mayoral campaign of 1977 when we came up with the idea of we the jury. We impaneled a jury of 12 men and women representing a diversity of neighborhoods, ethnic, religious, racial backgrounds.
In the last poll, Harnett, Koch, and Cuomo led in that order. On this one, the foreman announced the results.
Beam minus 39, Koch plus 83, Cuomo plus 45, Harnett plus 27.
I knew that I was going to win when the jury came out in my favor. And here I'm running against 6 other candidates, and they selected me, is my recollection. I remember that experience very well. It reinforced my faith in the American jury system. I, in a sense, was part of Channel 5 for an extended period of time because when I was a member of Congress, back in, I think it was 76, 77, when I first came on the program to debate with Dr. Martin Aband. And I come back from time to time whenever they invite me to bring people up to date on what the mayor is doing. I've always found Channel 5 to be very fair in its coverage of City Hall. Sometimes they beat me up, sometimes they say nice things about me, but I've never thought of them as being other than fair, if on occasion in error.
We have always treated our mayors and our colleagues on Channel 5 with respect tempered by the truth. Some stories are more appropriate for a detailed treatment. A lot of the early documentaries on Channel 5 dealt with personalities. One of the best remembered is James Faulkner's word and picture portrait of his native Mississippi.
He had lived in that society all his life and was torn by conflicts of conscience. Yet he wrote of it with compassion and understanding, seeing in it its virtues and its faults.
My childhood was as American as apple pie and really as the 4th of July. The memories I have of my childhood are happy ones. They're very good memories.
In the cruel nightmare that was my childhood, there was one place, one refuge, a hill in Central Park. From that hill, I could see Harlem. I could see the dark and brooding ghetto. From that hill, I could also see downtown.
Another concern of Channel 5 documentaries was health. In the late 1950s, the medical series A Question of Life shows for the first time on television the technique of reviving a patient's heart, which had stopped during surgery. A decade later saw another Channel 5 first, open heart surgery, broadcast live in Miracle in OR 5. Last year, the tradition of fine medical documentaries was continued with an examination of the emergency room at the Jersey City Medical Center.
Our documentaries and all the primetime shows end at 9:58:20, followed by a commercial, a station break, and something I've always wanted to do. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? That has to be one of the most recognizable sentences in New York television, and it comes from Channel 5's commitment to community affairs programming. which started back in the 40s.
The chimes of historic Healy Tower tell us that it's time for the 24th in a series of televised Georgetown University forums.
Rutgers University and this station present a report from Rutgers.
About 20 years ago, Channel 5's executives perceived the need to serve a part of the community that television had largely ignored, the minority people of the metropolitan area. They hired a young black woman as co-host of the first program on television anywhere about and for a minority neighborhood. It was Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant with Roxy Roker.
Hello, I'm Jim Laurie.
And I'm Roxy Roker. Welcome to Inside Bedford-Stuyvesant.
Bedford-Stuyvesant is a neighborhood of families and wonderful schools at that particular time and when I grew up. And during the 1960s, it was really being projected to the broader community and throughout the country as a ghetto. I mean, that was a popular word for it then, a ghetto. We could talk to people in the community about the wonderful parts. Everybody else knew about the negatives, but we wanted to project on that show some wonderful positive things, and I think we did it.
In 1969, I became co-host of the show with Joe Dennis, and you'll see a slightly nervous Marion Etoile on her debut.
And, can I call you by your first name? Tate. How about that? That was an easy way of finding it out.
At the same time, the station developed and aired a series of focus spots designed to break down prejudices and help bridge the gaps among the many groups that seem to be polarizing the city. They were unique. Members of the community, from corporate executives and leaders of minority groups, to dropout teenagers and former drug addicts. They all ad-libbed a one-minute message of information and help. The third series, inaugurated in 1968, was the Harlem Cultural Festival. With the help of the Parks Department, Mount Morris Park became the setting for a series of pop concerts. The first show featured the great Count Basie and his orchestra. Our weekly public affairs series, Off the Set, gives all our on-air personalities a chance to explore issues in depth.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy Lick.
This one aired last April.
What are the chances of a woman vice presidential candidate this year?
For anyone to think that a woman can't do it, you just got to think of the guys who run for president and who've been president. And then Americans have got to start understanding. Now, I realize that that doesn't happen overnight, and that will be a process of education, but it's going to happen, and we just can't only rely on the polls.
In 1980, we decided to celebrate New York in a big, small way. Big Apple Minutes were started as an experiment. A run of about 6 weeks was expected. 4 years and several hundred bushels later, the apple still crunches 3 times an evening, and there's no end of locations in sight.
Visit the New York Botanical Garden, right here in the Bronx.